Welcome back. If you've been following along with me in Module 6, we've covered a bunch of strategies to attract sellers so that you can go on some listing appointments. And I just shared with you those key questions that you need to get answered before you go on the listing appointment. So now I want to walk you through what you need to do to prepare for the listing appointment. Remember, everything is all about building your systems, putting things in place. You do the work, the heavy lifting first. I know there's a lot of work to getting all these things I'm about to talk about in place, but then once it's there, you do what you have to do to get listing appointments and you're ready to rock and roll. You basically have to do a little research, do a CMA, and you're ready for an appointment. Let's dive in. We're going to talk about your listing toolkit. Now, in your listing toolkit, the things I'm going to talk about here, majority of them I'm covering in detail in Module 7, okay? So you're going to always have your pre-listing package ready to rock and roll. The idea behind a pre-listing package is just a few professional steps that you take to send ahead of time before you go out on the appointment. It could include a video. It's giving them a sneak peek about what you do to sell a home. Again, all the details in the next module, but I want you to have a pre-listing package ready to rock and roll, including the letter and the content that you're going to put in an email to send to them. You need a home seller guide of some sort, whether this is a PDF that you email, a nice printed out PDF booklet, like a little booklet, the color booklet that would have information about the process for selling a home in your area. A little bit about what you do to market can be in this as well. You can have that as well. I love this. You can get this from a lot of third-party sources. Again, I'll cover it in the next module. You may have a more formal listing presentation. That's not what you sent in the pre-listing. You may find that when I go over all that in Module 7, there may be things in the pre-listing that become your presentation. And again, we'll walk through all the different things that you can do for a listing presentation. But this needs to be done, customized, looking awesome, and ready to go. You need a measuring tool for room dimensions if your area requires room dimensions. Not all MLSs do require it, but if you do, you can go to the good old-fashioned tape measure or get a digital measuring device. Don't go the lazy way out and copy the room dimensions from the previous listing or some other agents who's probably done the same thing. So a measuring device potentially. And then you need to master your CMA software, all right? Now that could be what comes with your MLS. There are third-party software. Your company might provide this. Your MLS may have it. There may be an upcharge for it, things like Cloud CMA, and there are others. But you're gonna have to decide what software do you wanna use to prepare a CMA, and you're going to need to go learn how to do that. Now what I want to cover next is tips on preparing the CMA and walk you through a philosophy I've been training for years on how to get yourself ready, and then you just need to go learn how to use the software. Okay, so what is a CMA? It is the comparative market analysis, sometimes called a competitive market analysis, CMA, and it's the assessment of a property's value that we do as professional real estate agents. And it's based on similar or comparable properties, what we call the comps, that have sold in that same market and specifically in that same general area. Now I will be talking about that you're going to use not just sold comps and how they apply, availables, expireds, and so forth, what's under contract, okay? But let's jump into the steps and these power tips for presenting a great CMA. First things first, if you're going on a listing appointment, you need to gather all the data on the subject property. So that's everything from clearly the address, but also the neighborhood, the municipality, the county, what MLS area is it in, what's the square footage, is it a single or a two-story, the bedrooms, the baths, the lot size, the year built, any renovations and upgrades or extra features. This is why we just talked about in the last lesson how important it is to have a conversation with the seller so you can find out what they have done that may not show up in the tax records, because it is going to impact the value of their home just as the condition of the home is going to impact. So here, remember, you're asking for finding out if they have a swimming pool or any additions. Did they do anything else like a covered patio? Have they upgraded the floors or redone the bathrooms? All the things that we talked about in the last lesson. You need to gather all this data because you're going to do an analysis using the computer if you don't do the two-step approach that I mentioned earlier, where you go out, look at the house, then come back and do your homework. If you're just doing the one-step approach, which most people do, you're only had a conversation with the seller. If you haven't seen the home, you're relying on all this data to present the market analysis. Now, where do you get the data? Tax records, obviously. Every MLS has some version of a tax record that's tied to the county tax assessor site. So that could be something like Realist. There's all types of data that are connected with so many MLSs. Remind's another one. I recommend highly that you go to the public tax assessor site. Sometimes, and I have found this often, that the data that we're getting inside our MLS may not be the most accurate, so use the public records to pull out all the information that you need, that you will need not only to do the CMA, but also to complete the listing paperwork, particularly the listing agreement. Realtors Property Resource, or RPR, is another resource most realtors that are part of the National Association of Realtors have. And the last source, you may laugh a little bit, but you definitely need to do this. You need to go look at Zillow and Realtor.com and get those estimates, because I'll tell you why. The client has done it. The seller has already been on those sites, and they already have what Zillow and Realtor.com are saying their house is worth, and they're going to bring this up. So you need to be prepared. That information can potentially help you, especially if those estimates are off, okay? So now let's get into how to build your CMA in your MLS or your software of choice if you choose to use a third-party CMA software. All right, now my approach to doing the CMA is to get the big picture of the area first. Now you go big so that you have all the information that you need so that you can filter it out and present what you want to the seller. All right, this is important. You're not going to overwhelm the seller with all the information, but my approach to go big first is for you. And this is to help you get prepared, because when I've been on appointments in the past where I was too micro in the beginning and I didn't do the big picture approach, and I would get in, the seller would say, well, what about that house down the street? And you're going to be fumbling going, well, wait a minute, that didn't come up in my research, because you went too specific. So you need all the information, have it ready so you can handle it. This will make sense as I move along, but you're only going to present the data that is applicable to their home, using language like the appraiser is most likely going to use these comps, and here's why. All right, so big picture, and then you're going to go and filter and get it down. So what are we looking for? We're going to find the different models that are in this neighborhood. If the home is not custom and it's in a neighborhood where you can find the comps, there's a whole other approach for custom. So let me just stay focused today on a home in a neighborhood where there are comps easily available. You're going to look for the different models and the square footage ranges that are in this neighborhood or a comparable geographic area if you can't find comps. Study the trends for what's on the market, what's under contract, what's sold. It's going to start telling you a picture. Be ready to narrow that search, right? That's what I was just referencing, to find the best comps that you want to present to the seller. But you definitely want to know that two-story home that's 300 square foot bigger than the model, the home that you're about to go list, has this as a price range. You need to have all this, and you can do all of this on a computer research to start with, okay? Remember to compare apples to apples when possible, and what I mean by that is you're looking for model and feature matches first and foremost, just like an appraiser would. Use the map feature. One of the things I do in the MLS, as I used to be very focused on just pulling stuff up in the neighborhood. Now, if you're not able to find enough comps that are model matches, specifically the two-story home that's 2,511 square feet, then you need to broaden your search a little bit. And I like the map search feature, where I can say, give me all properties within a half mile of the subject property. You can type this into the MLS, and then do a half mile, and then maybe go up to a 1 mile radius, but make sure you're putting in the features that most are similar to your home. So the features I like to use for that when I'm doing my CMA is clearly the area, whether you use this map feature in a half mile radius or a mile radius, but the same neighborhood, the same MLS area, maybe the same zip code, so the same general geographic area, and then you're needing a square footage range. My rule of thumb, 100 to 200 square feet either side of the subject property. And then you make adjustments if you can't find enough. If you find too much, you filter it down. So you can say this, I need 3 bedrooms, I need a 2-car garage, and I want houses with just pools. But if you don't find anything, then you may have to take the pools out, for example, and you get the idea. You're going to learn the particulars of how to do what I'm talking about when you take a class on how to use the MLS to be able to do a CMA. All right? So you're going to select those best comps to include in the CMA, and as I mentioned, I want you to think like an appraiser. Most recent solds, that's the most important thing. What sold recently? As far back as 90 to 120 days is best. In a market, it depends on the market. If there's taking a long time to sell a home, an appraiser will adjust and go back maybe 6 months to find comps. In a hotter market where there's not as much inventory, a seller's market, they're looking at 3 months. All right? So solds, that's what we're looking at. People like to focus on sellers in particular. Well, the house across the street is trying to get XYZ for the house. That's the actives, that's the available inventory, and that is the competition. That's the competition for this listing. That doesn't say that's the value of the house. So we are going to continue to bring actives in because we want to help that when we're sitting down with the seller to get them real about pricing. So we're going to look at solds first. We're going to look at actives as the competition. The next important thing to look at is the under contracts or the pendings. Why? That's going to show there's activity and interest in this area. So again, we don't know what a house is going to sell for or appraise for actives and under contracts until it sells, but it does tell the story. You do want to include it, but you're going to focus the seller, most importantly, on the solds. Last piece, the expireds and the withdrawns, that can help you in a case-by-case scenario because it can show overpriced listings. So if you all of a sudden have a ton of expires and you can tell it's because it's overpriced, then put those in your CMA because that is going to help the seller realize that's what could happen to them. All right, so those are the general tips. Go big picture, gather as much information, and get that all squared away so that you can put together the comps that you want to prepare in your final CMA package or the report that you're going to print out to bring. All right, the next part of preparing for the listing appointment is the listing paperwork. My recommendation is you want to have, go with the assumptive close that you're going out there to list the home. So pre-fill out the listing agreement and the disclosure forms. Decide if it's hard copy or electronic signatures. Most of us go with electronic signatures now. Depending on who your clients are, you might need to bring the hard copy. And you're going to fill everything out with the exception of list price, maybe commission. Those are things that you can add at the last minute. All right, now, prior to your listing appointment, you're going to get everything ready to rock and roll. You're going to gather your presentation materials. You're going to have your CMA. A couple other bonus tips. If you have time, you did the research in the computer, drive the neighborhood if needed. Go ahead of time from the appointment or even go early. And then if you can, preview available listings prior to your listing appointment. Why? Because that's so powerful when you go sit down with the seller and they're going to be the competition. And when you're going through your market analysis, you're able to say, you know, I went and previewed your competition. Let me talk to you about what's going on in that home and my opinion, and then you can add your opinion on where they need to be priced. Now look, the seller has already done this work too. Everything's online, right? They've gone to Zillow. They've gone to Redfin or Realtor.com to see what they can think their house is worth. They've looked at the competition. They've looked at the people's houses and the photos that they have up, and they're going to begin to start talking to you about, you know, well, why their house is better. Well, we're going to cover all of that when we get to in the next module for the listing presentation. Everything else you need to do work with sellers. So join Matt next, where he's going to wrap this module up for you and give you some let's get to work checklist. I'll see you in Module 7.